Hi everybody, welcome back to my LinkedIn Lives. I'm Jasmine Navarro, certified wellbeing expert, working with educational institutions and companies, helping them support their family wellbeing challenges. And as you know, every week I interview different experts who make a difference. And today I'm super excited to be interviewing Chris. Hi Chris, how are you doing?
Hi Jasmine, I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
No, thank you so much for coming on. I've been really looking forward to this one, really. I know you have so much expertise in this area. But before we start, can you tell everyone about yourself and what you do?
Well, that's a big question, right? So I'm obviously Chris Miller. I'm a certified coach that focuses predominantly around men's health, sort of holistically. What I was saying to a friend of mine the other day was I seem to be coaching people like me who are sort of a certain age and who are potentially a little bit lost in the world, maybe a little bit overwhelmed, not feeling like they're where they're supposed to be. So that's kind of been a bit of a journey to find that. I mean, obviously they're not all exactly like me that I coach, but it's generally that I look at, because I obviously am a man. I look at how life is impacting men, and that's not to, obviously we can't do away with centuries, if not millennia, of history where men have been, predominantly in charge. But I think we're certainly seeing a crisis at the moment for men that I think is solvable. And what I don't want is for people to go through or to have felt kind of how I've felt in the past. And like I say, that sense of being a little lost, a little unsure as to what their role is, where they're going, how life is developing. So that's kind of what I do.
Yeah. No, I love that, Chris. I mean, there's so many important points that you've made already. And I admire you and your work. I really do. But I'm really excited about this topic. So you chose the capability crisis. What is happening to men in our lives? Can you explain a bit more about what that means and why you chose it for today?
Yeah, I mean, because the reason I chose, I'll do that answer about face, but I basically chose it because it's something that's really important to me, and it's very integral to the work that I do, and certainly the work that I want to be doing going forward. What it means to me is, as I said previously, I feel that, and certainly, when you start to look at research and you start to talk anecdotally to people, there seems to be very much a crisis of capability or a crisis of confidence for men at the moment. And I don't think that's just men of my generation. I think that's, we also look at and take it to a very extreme level. When you look at suicide rates, they are ridiculously higher for men. They are, the two groups that are basically most at risk are young men and older men. And I think there's probably a very good reason for that. I think it's quite, the world that younger men are coming into is quite challenging in a lot of ways. As social media, I think, has a part to play in that. But I think also, they're being raised by men who are struggling themselves. And so, there's this kind of, as we all know, our kids emulate us, and, kids pick up on everything. It's not just what you're saying, it's how you're acting, and even the micro cues, they're very, very attuned to certainly their parents, but also other adults around them. And I think, what we're seeing at the moment in the world is a symptom of that, basically.
Wow. No, I think it's so important. Do you think men are suffering more now than in the past? Or do you think there's just more awareness now?
I think it's a bit of both. I think there's definitely more awareness of it. I think, you know, we are all so scrutinized these days. You know, I mean, so I grew up in the sort of 70s and early 80s, you know, and I mean, you know, the internet, as far as I was aware, wasn't even a thing. You know, the only phone we had was connected to the wall, you know, so, and if you did, you know, stupid things like we all do when we're younger, you know, the only people that knew about it were the people that you told. Nowadays, you know, everything is open to scrutiny, everything is open to manipulation. And I think that's you know, it's an incredibly challenging way to live a life, constantly under scrutiny. I mean, you know, to be relatively, to a certain degree, flippant, I mean, you know, look at what happens to animals in zoos. You know, I mean, they're outside of what I would say is their natural habitat, but they're also scrutinized constantly. You know, you could very well make the argument that we've kind of created our own zoo for us all to be both the observers and the animals.
That's terrifying thought, isn't it? Really, a terrifying thought. Now, there's so many things I'd like to ask you, but I just have a question. But I just want to say hi to everybody who's joining. We're just talking about the capability crisis, what's happening to men in our lives with Chris Miller, the expert on this. If you have any comments or questions, please let us know. And we do have a question on Instagram from Amna. Hi, Amna. How are you doing? She says, are men struggling more with confidence and purpose, or has the conversation just become louder?
I mean, that's a very good question. And again, it's, you know, it's incredibly difficult to know because, you know, I mean, even if I look at my parents, you know, you didn't kind of talk about stuff so much as we do today. And we weren't, you know, as I say, we weren't bombarded by other people's opinions, you know, that we didn't even know, or be open to criticism by people that we didn't know, you know, and on the scale that it happens these days. I think men are struggling in part because of this, is my opinion. I think, you know, there's so much that has changed, you know, and again, you know, you look at your own parents and your parents look at their parents, and, you know, it trickles down and change happens, you know, can happen incredibly fast, but, you know, you're always slightly, you know, you carry some of that with you. And I think, you know, certainly for, as I say, I mean, I'm 56, 57 this year, you know, for men of my age, you know, a lot of men my age are in senior positions in corporations where it's very lonely. You know, when you think about how much there is in terms of comparison. So, you know, what we should aspire to, how we should act, you know, what we should look like, all of these things are on a global scale. Now, you know, I think whether this would happen with or without social media, I don't know. But I think, you know, what happens is that men get to a certain level, they find themselves incredibly lonely. It's difficult to talk to, you know, to the ones that are closest to them outside of work, because there's a pressure, you know, and an expectation. And also, you know, I mean, that comes from inside of men as well. You know, I mean, not saying that everybody's wife or kids is, you know, has this expectation. I think, you know, unfortunately, the way men are wired, generally it makes it difficult for us to ask for help. We always want to feel as if we are capable. And you know, and we are generally speaking more goal and solution focused. And so if you get to a stage where, let's say, you know, somebody again of my age, especially with the speed of technological change, is already quite, you know, frightening. Add to that people coming up behind us, you know, up that career ladder, who have grown up with this stuff, who are much more adept, much more agile, much more dynamic in, you know, from that perspective. And I think it creates this sense of, well, am I capable?
And if I'm not,
capable at this, what does that mean? Like, you know, for me internally, what does it do to my identity?
Yeah, no, that's such a valid point, I think. And once you start asking yourself those kinds of questions, you just have more and more questions, don't you? And then you become full of self-doubt. And Imran says, hi, Imran. Great topic, great discussion, very informative. Thanks for conducting. Thank you so much for coming. So you mentioned loneliness, which I often read about that and how it can actually kill us, which really doesn't surprise me. But what other, I know you work with a lot of men and mental health. What other problems do men come to you with? So loneliness, you mentioned, not feeling.
Again, I mean, you know, part of the reason for raising the capability thing is, generally speaking, is that sense of, you know, feeling like almost like they don't know if they're capable anymore. They had a sense of that they were, you know, I mean, we kind of go through our, you know, late teens, early 20s, you know, early 30s, thinking that we're invincible and, you know, the world is our oyster. And I think certainly for men, what generally tends to happen as well, and is really interesting. So I went to a talk by a guy called Ryan Park, who is, if anybody ever gets to see him talk, is absolutely amazing. Refers to himself as the men's coach. So it's Park with an E. Absolutely fascinating. His take is, you know, all around testosterone levels. So certainly, you know, and so I know obviously we were at the GCC, the menopause summit, and reports, and how it's very insidious that the testosterone levels. Now Ryan's take is, well, that doesn't have to happen. It can happen naturally, like over time, unless you. But it is reversible. You know, you can do things about it to stave off this kind of age-related decline in testosterone. And testosterone for men is the thing. Again, you know, I'm taking Ryan's here, but testosterone is the thing that men require in times of stress. So it's not an aggressive. Like a lot of people think that it's all about aggression. It's not. It's it's about dealing with stress.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, as I said, I mentioned my age. I won't keep going on about it. I don't get overly surprised a lot these days. But I have to say, I sat there listening to this talk, and I was like, you know, because he was talking. It was a talk about mothers and sons, and he was saying that, you know, for women, if you're in a stressful situation, generally speaking, hormonally, what you need is oxytocin. So you need hugs, you need to talk, you need to feel like you've been heard, and you know, your opinion or whatever has been validated. For men, it's more about feeling a sense of capability, and then determining what goals are, and then determining, right, how do I work the solution from you know, how do I make that happen? And so, you know, and the kind of mind-blowing thing for me was, you know, I kind of know that, but I'm not practicing that. I have a 13-year-old son. He gets into stressful situations. I want to hug him. Like the same with my wife. They want to hug him. We want to make him feel better. What he needs, because what can happen is when women, you know, when he does start to get those hugs and the feelings and the talking, it can increase his stress levels, not decrease them.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting.
I know, absolutely fascinating. And I was like, this is incredible. And I think that, you know, that sense of feeling capable and confident sits deep within men in general. And, you know, it's why I think, you know, say my own thoughts, why we find it so difficult to ask for help, because we feel like we should be able to get through it, or whatever it is, by ourselves on our own. And, you know, I mean, when you think about that logically, it's nonsense. Like, everybody needs help. You know what I mean? It's like
emotions are stronger than logic. So
yes, absolutely, yeah.
No, but that's really interesting that you said that, because I know obviously women can find it hard to ask for help, like I do, but actually, like, you're explaining it really well, making me realize that. But with men, it's something in their DNA as well, so it's even harder.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, you know, when you look, you know, and we haven't been on the planet for that long, you know, and certainly in terms of evolutionary perspective, you know, Homo sapiens haven't been around that long. And I think, you know, when you look at hunter-gatherer tribes that are around today, you know, there's a whilst men will go off together, there's an isolation because you know you're hunting, you have to be quiet, you have to, you know, you have to be concentrating on what's going on around you, you know. And I mean, God, this sounds so sexist, doesn't it? But you know, the women are back in the village, all sat around having a chat, you know, doing, you know, making sure that the home and the hearth is you know, as good as it can be. So I think, you know, there's definitely, you know, evolutionary kind of markers for this. I think what's, you know, one of the things when you look at, you know, certainly since the speed of technological change since the Industrial Revolution, you know, is frightening from any perspective. I mean, how fast things change, and we're not hardwired to deal with things that going that, you know, changing that quickly. And and then in terms of, you know, society and how, you know, when you think about even a few, you know, say 100 years ago, let's say in the UK, it would be small, you know, you'd be part of a small village, generally speaking, you know, and there was a community sense. And a lot of that's, you know, certainly I think in industrialized countries is being lost. So,
no, you're right. You're right. Now, I've got another question on Instagram from Robert. Hi, Robert. How are you doing? Thanks for joining us. He says, are you saying that men are less resilient today? If so, why?
Wow. Put me on the spot, Robert. Thank you for that. Would I say men are? No. I think that men are as resilient as they have ever been. I just don't think that we necessarily challenge ourselves, or you know, it's not internally where there is it's because of what's going on around and how that impacts on our sense of identity, our sense of, you know, manhood and what that means. And you know, and as I say, I mean, technological advances, you know, and look, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not beating a drum for things to go back to, you know, Victorian times or something. I think, you know, my wife is an MD of an international company here in Dubai. I mean, she is phenomenally good at what she does, and I would support her in whatever she wants to do. So it's not about, you know, going back. It's about how do we deal with the situation we find ourselves in now. I mean, talking about resilience. I mean, so when I used to live in the UK, I was, you know, really into kind of ultra, you know, adventure racing and ultra distance and all of this kind of stuff. And so one of the people, a book I read was about Ernest Shackleton, who, for those who don't know, was you know, an early 1900s explorer who went down to the Antarctic. His ship got trapped in ice, and he had to, with some of his crew, get to South Georgia to be rescued. And you know, I mean, these are guys wearing wool and whatever, you know, no modern gear, but toughed it out and did it. Now, you know, I'm in a pinch, you know, your own survival, your life on the line. I think most people, men and women, find extraordinary levels of resilience and strength. What I'm saying is, I think it's being chipped away at, or our belief in ourselves is being chipped away at by what we're being served up, the environments that we find ourselves in, and hormonally, you know, kind of what's happening to us. I mean, you know, again, going back to Ryan, I mean, there are really, really simple, very obvious things that men can do to, you know, keep their testosterone levels at a decent level, you know, and one of those is sleep, you know, which we all know. One of those is exercise. Everybody knows it, you know, but do we do it? Do we put it into practice? Or are we so,
healthy
living up in what's going on outside of us that we put ourselves second.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And that's the same for men, both men and women, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you think, you know, people working from home, the remote work, do you think that's affected men's mental health or not really?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely, you know, we're social creatures by nature.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I guess you could argue, well, are we social creatures in, you know, in big, you know, in big, does it work in big groups, or does it need to be kind of smaller, you know, real connections that give you that sense of purpose and well-being? And I would err to that. I would say, you know, what you need is some good quality. You know, it's quality over quantity. So, you know, one of the things that I've done, because I work, you know, for myself, and I work remotely, and I'm often on my own, and I don't deal very well with being on my own.
No, I don't think anyone does, Chris.
No. And so what I've done is set up a little group of, you know, friends of mine, and every now and again we'll go for lunch together, or we'll go for dinner, you know, and it's just that just pops up that sense of, okay, I've got my tribe. That helps me deal with that kind of.
No, that's brilliant. That's what I was going to ask you a little bit about. Maybe you can tell us a little bit. I mean, you don't have to share. You can share whatever you like about your journey and what's helped you, because maybe what's helped you.
It's nothing outstanding. You know, I've never had any severe crises, but you know, people close to me have had quite acute and severe issues with mental health, and that's women as well as men.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I mean, you know, and I guess this is why I like to talk about this stuff, because I think, you know, if somebody tries to commit suicide, it's a big, acute event that happens, and it sends shockwaves through, you know, around the people that. And that's absolutely right, and how it should be. I think there are probably a lot more people, men. I'll talk about men because that's obviously my area of expertise. But for men who feel as if something's not quite right, they don't feel that life's going necessarily the way they thought it was going to. They don't feel as, you know, again, you know, in terms of being that sense of comparison, they don't feel like they're, you know, where they should be. They don't feel that they're as successful as they should be. They should. And I think, you know, so for me, what happened was, since I have been in my probably late teens, I would have periods, probably never more than up to, you know, than about 4 days, let's say, where I would just feel very low. Like I just kind of couldn't be bothered with anything. Everything felt effort, and I just thought, oh, that's just me. Right, so from you know, my mid-teens, so what's that, 40 years, pretty much. That's what I thought. I thought, oh, I just go through these funks every now and again, and you know, I come out of them. So, you know, why bother? And it got to the stage at one point, I was in my last role, my last employed role, and I was getting there was a lot of stress. My kind of self-confidence was taking a hit. And it got to the stage where, you know, I would start, and I'm a bit of a crier anyway, but, you know, I would start crying for kind of no reason, or feel that sense of, you know, where you get that emotion stuck in your throat. And just, you know, thinking like everything was hopeless. I wasn't any good, you know, I was letting my wife down, my son down, you know, what was the future for me? And it never got to, you know, further than that. But eventually my wife was like, look, this isn't just going away by itself. So go and talk to somebody. So I went, saw my GP, had a chat with them, and had some therapy, and also was prescribed some pills to help my serotonin levels balance. And it was like, it's not like, I mean, as lots of people who know me will know, it's not like I'm like very zen all the time. Now, like, I get angry, I get frustrated, I get stressed and overwhelmed, and all these up. It just took the edge off it to the point where I could function and see past what was in my head there. And just then more able to talk about it, more able to kind of see it for what it was, and get just get that different perspective.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant.
So that's certainly from a mental health perspective. I mean, that's I guess is kind of where and that's why I think it is this. And the interesting thing is, when I set up Incremental, which is only a couple of years ago now, when I set it up, it was around September, and I was trying to think of content, and November was coming up, so I was like, oh, brilliant, I'll make some content around November. And next thing I know, I'm getting I start to get a kind of reputation as somebody who talks about mental health, men's mental health.
Brilliant.
And I was getting inundated with people who wanted to help. PTs, psychiatrists, psychologists, all kinds of people wanted to help to put together a month worth of activities. Put together a month worth of activities. Every time I told anybody, men and especially women, oh my God, this is exactly what's needed. Oh, I know so many people who need this. Just a place to talk, just a place to feel vulnerable, and safe, and just get some stuff off their chest. And we did the month, and we got zero engagement. Like, literally not a single person engaged. Look, and first time it was, I was kind of late to getting it all over the line. Wow. There's lots of reasons why it might have.
It says it all, though, doesn't it? It says it all, actually. Just that. Yeah. It's like the need's there, but actually turning up, showing up is a whole nother.
Yeah. And one of the things so this year when I did, I had a bit, obviously I had a year to think about it, and I was like, well, why did it, and then I was like, well, what you're trying to do is get men to meet up with other men that they don't know, to talk about, a feeling of being, in their own perception, not anybody else's, but incapable.
Oh yeah, that's true.
There's this, by saying that you feel as if you can't, you're not achieving, then you're kind of implicitly implying that you're not capable, and that hits into something, as Ryan talks about, and is so integral to the kind of DNA identity of men. So what I did this year is I kind of made it sort of more individual, and I got a lot more engagement. But
really,
going back to your point, I think it is very true. This is and it's a very challenging area. I mean, I kind of tried to steer away from going down this niche for quite a while, because getting men to talk. I mean, I'll talk the hind legs off a donkey, but about stuff that I'm interested in,
of course,
and
I guess
passionate about.
There's so many women's networking events, aren't there, in Dubai? But and maybe because like you said, we feel lonely, we want to feel connected, all those things, and we go to these events and we end up talking about our problems, actually. So maybe it's just about having, not having a space where we just come together and talk. Because if there was a women's group where we just come and we talk, I might not go either, because I might be thinking, well, we're going to talk about, even though that's what we're going to do anyway when we meet up. But it has a different, because then you think, oh, we're going to have to face things today, or I need to. Sometimes you just don't want to. So I don't know. Maybe.
No, and look, I mean, it is still something that I am putting my grey matter to, every day, is to think, what, how can I best help and serve, those people out there who, because I mean, coaching is not therapy. Like, as you know, right? It's not therapy. I'm not there to solve problems for them. I'm there to ask them about their own problems and get them to develop their own solutions to it, because there's a much bigger buy-in then. So I think, you know, it is a challenge with men. I think, you know, that's where, and I think especially for expats, because I think, you know, you're away, you know, you have to make these groups, and then they can be quite transitory if, you know, less so these days, but certainly still. And so I think, you know, but, you know, I think that's like one of the things that occurs to me is, you know, it's about doing stuff, like, you know, like if as my wife has said to me in the past, you know, it's not that I'm telling you because I need you to fix it. I just want to be able to get it out.
Exactly.
And, you know, for you to listen and for you to tell me it's all good, you know, it's going to be okay if that's what I need, or I just need a hug, or, you know, whatever. And, you know, I think a lot of the times we think about how things are impacting, you know, us or what we're doing. So as, you know, again, as men, we think, oh, well, you know, you tell, you know, and I mean, honestly, it's still a bit baffling. I mean, a lot less than when I was younger, but it's still a bit baffling to think, well, why would you tell me something if you don't want me to do something about it?
Oh,
right?
wow.
You know, I mean, I'm like,
no, it's very interesting.
70s, so
I think women do that as well, because I have friends who I talk to, and I just want them to listen to me and not tell me anything. And they're women, and they'll still offer me a solution. I don't want a solution. Just listen. Because I want to figure out the solution. If I'm talking, I will figure it out. But how can I figure it out otherwise?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, so I think it's you know, and this is one of the things. So you know, I don't want people to think I'm too kind of woo-woo or stuff, but I'm big into mindfulness practice, and I'm very, very interested in Stoic philosophy. And but you know, the reason I say that is because, you know, it's when we're trying to help someone, you know, and this is one of the things that I'm even, you know, I'm learning very slowly as a coach is, you know, it's not about me at all.
Exactly.
Not even a little bit about me. So if somebody, you know, if somebody tells me something, it's not about them, you know, saying, it's not about what I can do about it.
No.
So, you know, I have to question, you know, because actually it might be, you know, if it's like, oh, you know, the bin hasn't been emptied for 3 days. Well, you might be telling me that because, you know, the bin needs to be emptied, and that's a blue job, as they say. But it might, you know, if I don't question that, if I don't think, what is it, you know, that Jasmine or, you know, whoever needs from me, why are they, you know, then all we're doing is putting our own ego on it and saying, I'll come in, save the day, fix everything, and everything's wonderful. Well, it might be one, you know, I might feel wonderful about it.
Yeah, work for you, but
you might not, right?
The other person. No, it's so interesting. We're running out of time. So, I mean, we could talk about this for hours, Chris. It's such an important topic. But is there anything you want to say before we go that's something that you haven't said that you think is important regarding men's mental health? We're probably going to have another conversation at a later date.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, I think the thing is, you know, don't suffer in silence. Whoever it is that you talk to, whether it's a professional, so you keep it away from those that you care about, or it's those that you care about, or it's a colleague or whoever, do not suffer in silence. You know, we're not supposed to be happy all the time. That's a fallacy, right? We're supposed to go through a whole gamut of emotions. But if you are feeling down or feeling hopeless or overwhelmed or whatever the emotion is, and it starts to get chronic, you're feeling it for longer than, let's say, you know, 4 days without, you know, additional stuff coming in externally, then talk to somebody, please, because there are too many men, too many people take their own lives, and you know, those people didn't wake up one day and just say, that's you know, it didn't start there. It started way back.
I know,
you know, and it's those little chipping away that eventually culminates in that terrible.
Yeah, no, that's really good piece of advice. Thanks, Chris. And maybe if you could put your links on the post and how people can find you, maybe join your group as well. Like, what do they need to do? Maybe you could put a link on the post. That would be amazing. And you mentioned somebody else, the men's coach. I don't know if you want
Ryan Park. Yeah. No, I'll definitely. I'll have
be amazing.
Well,
no, I think, Chris, the work that you're doing is absolutely amazing, and I think a conversation can save a life. Yeah.
Yes.
Change everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. It does. And the thing is, it doesn't take a lot, because a lot of us, when we get to that level, we're just a pressure cooker, and all we need, we don't need it the hob to be switched off completely. Just need the little thing to
exactly
a little bit of pressure to be taken off.
Yeah, we don't need much. But anyway, we've got to go. But thank you so much, Chris, and thank you everyone for joining. No, absolute privilege talking to you. Thank you so much for sharing, and I will see everybody next week.